Steve Molesky back at the winter meetings here in the beautiful San Diego with John Manuel. John is the editor-in-chief for Baseball America, someone I've gotten to know well in the last couple of years. Nobody in the business does prospect news better than Baseball America. A lot of people do it well, nobody does it better. And John, great to have you here at the winter meetings. Now tonight, big doings for Baseball America, right?
Yeah, it is. It's our awards gala, and we did this awards gala every year from 2001 to 2008. Then we stopped doing it for a couple of years, and now thankfully we're reviving it here in 2014. So we give all of our awards. We give a lot of awards. We amateur side and professional side. So the Ripken's actually involved, giving our youth coach of the year, all the way up through our college, high school players of the year, up through major league player, and then our major league executive and manager of the year of special interest to Baltimore.
Special interest to Baltimore. Buck Showalter tonight being named and getting his award. Baseball America Manager of the Year, Dan Duquette Executive of the Year. Tell us a little bit about how you picked those two gentlemen who we know in Baltimore did a pretty good job.
Well, for Dan Duquette, it's really 4 years ago, you'd see him in the winter meetings and he was almost persona non grata. He'd been out of the game for several years. I think Baltimore fans know this, but to go from there and to where the Orioles franchise was at that time, to 2 playoff trips in 3 years, a 96-win year this year. They were the best team in the American League for a lot of the season. Obviously I know the Angels finished with a better record, but Baltimore, for all the things they went through also, and that was really why he got the Executive of the Year award, was because it wasn't an easy road there, especially this year, the injuries, especially to Matt Wieters, and the way they were able to massage the big league roster, fill holes on a budget, and create a consistent winner. We thought that really merited special attention. And the organization of the year, that usually goes more to a team that's a little bit more homegrown, more rookies and prospects, that kind of stuff. So Kansas City was a natural, I think, for that. But just the way that Dan Duquette kept the Orioles, not just competitive, but dominant in the American League East, made him an easy choice for Executive of the Year.
John, Keith Law made an interesting comment about Dan Duquette when I interviewed him here yesterday. He said he did a real good job in Boston. He's done a real good job in Baltimore, and he's done it in very different ways. He's evolved with the game, and I guess he means things like sabermetrics and some of the things that now are used for evaluation.
Right.
Do you see that?
I do, to an extent. He was ahead of the curve on the statistical analysis, and he was one of the first general managers, if not the first, to have an analytics expert. I actually spoke to Mike Gimbel this year, and if you may remember the name Mike Gimbel, the Boston media gave Duquette and Gimbel a really hard time for being an analyst, who was an analytics guy. I was like, yeah, I helped find Rudy Pemberton and Troy O'Leary and these kind of things. But those guys helped Boston win, and they helped Dan Duquette win, and he kept Boston a winner even after losing guys like Mo Vaughn. And obviously, so that was something he was ahead of the curve on. I think he's right in the curve, if not ahead of the curve, on the way the roster manipulation and using the entire 40-man roster to maximize your 25-man roster. And also internationally, the game is international. Dan's right in tune with that, whether it's Wei-Yin Chen or Gonzalez or some of the starting pitchers and these key role players that Baltimore has found, who not just key starting pitchers, but key starting pitchers on a budget. So I do think, I think it's more that he's been creative as opposed to revolutionary. I like the creativity though, and that's what, to me, that's his biggest strength as a general manager. I'll also go way back in Dan Duquette's history. Our Organization of the Year award, we started in 1981. He was the scouting director for the Brewers, and they won 3 straight, 85, 86, 87, as he was, again, a pioneer at that time. The 2 best players ever out of Australia, really, both signed by Dan Duquette, Graham Lloyd and Dave Nilsson in his days with the Brewers. So he's really been ahead of the curve for 30 years, which is very difficult to do in this industry.
Very difficult to do. Now, one thing, as we said at the top, that Baseball America is so great at is their coverage of prospects, ranking prospects. It is a tremendous honor for me to be involved with you guys on the Orioles, getting to write some of the write-ups and work with you guys. And it's your list. You guys put it together. I help with a little bit, and as I said, honored to do it. John, what is your take on the Oriole Top 10 list this year?
I like the pitching at the top. I think the Orioles could use, like a lot of organizations, a little bit more depth. We're in a pitching era right now, and the hitting has gone out of the game. I happen to think it's because the athleticism has gone out of the game. I'm concerned about that. That's why there's so many Latin American players in the game and so many Cuban players in the game, is that a guy who has that athleticism and that body in the U.S. gets steered to other sports. If Yasiel Puig had grown up in the United States, he'd be an outside linebacker or running back or a ridiculously good, strong safety. But he grew up in Cuba where baseball is first, and Dominican Republic, same thing. So there's an alarming lack of athleticism in the game, and and that's reflected in the Orioles top 30, to be honest with you. It's not easy to find premium athletes, and that's why a guy like Michael Givens got chance after chance to hit because he was athletic and he could maybe stay in the middle of the diamond, but hitting is hard. So, that's where the Orioles system is right now. There's you'd like to have more pitching depth, but they do have a clutch of pitchers at the top who are power arms, guys like Hunter Harvey, guys like Dylan Bundy. Maybe you'd feel a little bit better about it if you still had Eduardo Rodriguez, but you know what? That rental of Andrew Miller almost got you to the World Series, and Andrew Miller was certainly worth the price they paid for him in his short window in Baltimore. But athleticism and up-the-middle talent, you kind of those are the three things you want to see from a good farm system is power pitching, depth, and then up-the-middle talent offensively. They've got one of those three. The depth and the up-the-middle offensive options are not the biggest strength, but maybe next year if Chance Cisco has a big year, Adrian Marin has a better year, those kind of things, you can start to see some of that develop for the Orioles.
Last thing, quick comment on Bundy. Can he be as good in 2015 at some point as he was in 2012 before the injury, before the surgery?
I think he can be. I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of Dylan Bundy relaxing and not trying to make up for lost time, just trying to be who he is. And I think a lot of times pitchers with these injuries, and I think fans also, when they see Tommy John surgery, you expect the guy to come back. It's hard, you know, and I know, Steve, the players will tell you how hard that rehab is. So it's difficult to come back from it. I think it's really, for Dylan at this point, it's more mental than it is physical at this point. So mentally, if he can overcome that fear that he may have of really letting go and really cutting loose, he can be the old Dylan Bundy.
John, it's great to see you here at the winter meetings, and you guys have a great banquet tonight. I know it'll be fun as Baseball America honors some of the best in the game.
Thanks a lot, Steve. My pleasure.
John Manuel is the editor-in-chief of Baseball America, here with us at the winter meetings for MASNsports.com.